No, it makes a lot of sense. It's actually great to hear that you can also profit from the current situation, not only long term but also short term in some kind of way. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, what I said before, what's especially exciting is that you also had sales experience during the crisis, during the last crisis. So you said you started sales with your sales career in 2007, and then shortly afterwards the crisis came, the subprime crisis. So do you feel that, like, especially like this experience or also any of the other past sales experiences have prepared you for a situation like this?
I would say partly. I mean, it's hard because I think this situation again is very unique because everybody's affected. I think the last crisis was more driven that some sectors were more affected, others less. And I mean, you have this like distribution in this situation still, but it's still more broadly that many sectors are affected in a negative way. And then also the significance or severity of the impact is super large. I mean, travel industry back, like I think in 2001, was very impacted. So a few airlines went bankrupt and something like that. And this time it's, I think some parts even worse because, you know, they can't fly at all. It's not like that some people are not going on flights.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they simply like have like 99% less flights. So I think these things are, you know, like different. And I think the other side, what actually prepares you is this, let's say, seeing a little bit through it, but only a little bit, I would say, that, you know, at some point in time, you will come out of that. And the other part is like, if you're in tech, and I think everybody who is can be very fortunate about that. If you are in a business, especially a SaaS business, from a revenue perspective, this is super resilient. Yeah, you might have implications, some more, some less, but you're not like a travel provider that all of a sudden has revenues zero, like nothing. No money coming in. And I mean, that from a company perspective is a super worst case scenario. And then you have to really have either enough money in the bank or investors with deep pockets or other strategies on how you finance for that situation. I think this is really, really tough. And those companies obviously are taking much more extreme measures like laying off people and things like that. So to that extent, back to my point, I think again, at the time, I had to do what's necessary to do the calls, to input the effort that you as a salesperson have to do, you know, like not reaching out to prospects, because I think you kind of like giving yourself or trying to give yourself those answers in your head. Like if I call them now, will they say yes? Probably no, because they're probably going through a tough time. But you don't know that until you don't ask the question. And I think difference now, especially, is that you have to put a lot of, you know, like compassionate effort in it, so that basically you just don't call and say, hey, do you want to buy? I don't care. I just need to make my quota. It's more like, hey, is there something I can help you with? Because I think we have things that could help you because we see that we help other people in other areas. So, and if you're one of those people in those areas, I think we should talk. And I think this is a very critical component, one, to do the necessary things, but with the necessary level of compassion. Otherwise, you will basically bounce back quickly and be frustrated. But I think if you do it, you might maybe not make, I don't know, 100% of your quota each month, but maybe you end up at 60, 70, 80%, I think under current circumstances is still something. You still get money in. You still keep things going. And I think that's important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We also saw from all our other customers and also from other sales leaders in the industry that the general recommendation was to be very, very understanding and be very helpful and try to help prospects, like existing customers, but also prospects, future potential customers, and trying to help them as much as you can, and rather adopt a sales approach of where can I help rather than do you want to buy? And as you said, I need to make my quotas, which was like for some companies more the way that they sold in the past, right?
Yeah, and I think it's actually funny because if you think that true, like why would you do that in any times differently?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, totally. You should not. So I think that's one of the structural changes that the current situation basically started. So, I mean, as you just said, right? I mean, you should always be helpful. You should never just sell something to someone. However, there is I don't know, just the new approach that has been implemented by a couple of like most of the companies that have been successful even during this crisis, or are successful even during this crisis. So that's definitely one of that. Yeah, I think so too. 100%.
Yeah.
I'd also be very much interested in learning more about how you actually coach your sales team when you don't see them physically. So when they all work remotely from home, whether there have been any challenges that you faced, and whether also there have been any solutions that you used to enable better coaching of your sales teams, or also onboarding of new hires potentially.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely a challenge, especially with new hires. I think the secret sauce of our company is our culture, and I think that's kind of like a buzzword sentence. Probably you will hear many companies say that, but I can confidently say that for us, this is like significantly the case, and we lived from that fact that many people were in the office and like would get the sense of the vibe and be part of that whole thing that we started there. So that's missing. So how do you get people engaged? And I think there's a couple of elements that are in there, and obviously one thing when it comes down to training and coaching that is very critical is actually that you allow people to shadow calls or shadow their calls back. And this is something we've done before, but need to rely on more even now. So for example, like if you run a demo or something like that, invite your new joiners to join. And I think every prospect at the moment will be very, very like understanding about the fact that there's somebody who's listening in to learn something. I don't think I mean, there might be some people who say, no, I don't want that too, and then that's fine, then you have to cancel the exercise. But I think in probably 99% of the cases, you will not have a problem with that. And this is something that is very critical. Or even you could ask, for example, especially on the new joiners, when they do their first demos or something like that, to record a demo. Obviously, they have to ask their prospects for consent in order to, so that it's like not a secret recording. That would be the worst case. Don't do that. That's very silly. But also in that sense, we've made good experience that people are willing to do that recording, so that you can re-listen in and iterate on things that happened. And I think this is a very, very critical exercise, especially with new joiners or people who are new to sales, that you have enough time for training for them. And then the other part is simply role plays. And the good thing is about role plays, like when you're anyway practicing remote demos and you do that remote, then you're kind of in a sweet spot. So I think yes, there is challenges. I think it's more like from an excitement, motivation, culture level. But I think if you have the setup that I've just described, I don't think you have any challenges from pure like know-how transfer. Having said that, one thing that we're currently working on beforehand, we had like, for example, like a base training for every new joiner. They would be trained by an external provider. They would come in over the course of a few weeks and come in and eat like for a full day for a couple of weeks. So we're just shifting this into remote. We're not sure yet how this will work out, because there's a couple of things that typically function better. We're like in a group that when you're all present, yeah, I guess we'll figure it out at some point in time.
Okay, I understand. So basically the key things that you do to train and coach your sales reps are call shadowing, call recording, listening to successful or also unsuccessful calls, to best practice calls, but also then when you join new joiners, when you hire new joiners, run them through a training that now just doesn't take place physically in person, but is now taking place remotely. So those are the three key things that you use to coach and onboard your sales reps, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a subset. I mean, there's, for example, also something that we do is the certification. So every basically salesperson has to know the product really well. And what it means, they build up basically a Personio account from scratch, and then they have to run a demo, and then they run through a certification. Like they have to present to an audience, they rate them. If it's like a sufficient level, then they pass. If it's not a sufficient level, they don't pass, and they have to repeat the exercise again.
Okay, understand. Do you use any solutions to do this?
Yeah, I mean, typically demo desk for running the demo. So that's kind of like what we do. Less than that, because it's basically like our product. You just set up a demo account. People can do that, and then from there, there's not much you need around.
Okay, it makes sense. Understand. Yeah, I mean, like, is there any advice that you would give to other companies who like are either smaller than you, smaller than Personio, or also like are in similar industries, face similar challenges than you face, like also giving given the context that you had from the past crisis you experienced. Do you have any advice that you would want to give to other people in the same industry?
I don't know where to start. It's dependent on what kind of problems you have, because I think every company has a little bit of different problems. Some are facing a demand crisis, other facing, I don't know, different elements that, for example, I don't know, they have too high costs or something like that, which they can't wind down for whatever reasons. I think very early stage companies are actually kind of nearly in a slightly better position than like scale ups or companies that are heading towards a scale up stage that like we are, because they have typically less marketing spend, less sales spend, so they don't have these kind of like apparatuses already in play that they probably have to cut down because they can't actually execute on them. They're more focused on product, and I think they should stick to their investments because probably their financing is anyway, or should be anyway, structured in the way that they could, live a period with that situation. On the other side, I think what everybody should do is calculate scenarios. So to really understand, okay, what is your worst case and what is your best case, and kind of try to figure out where you're going to be and track that in a very, very close fashion to understand, okay, how is it going to develop? On which path am I? Am I better than expected? Am I worse than expected? And probably everybody should look at their product roadmap and iterate. Because I think what's now shifting significantly is like why people are buying. So everybody's saying, yeah, digitization is now going to get accelerated. That might be true in some areas, but not necessarily in all areas. It's not like that all of a sudden everything that has the stamp digitize on it will be kind of like sold like cookie cutter or cut bread, or how do you say that in English? I don't know. But I think if you focus on efficiency and helping companies to be lean, that doesn't mean necessarily to cut costs, but maybe like preventing going into overhead. I think then you have a really good case. Then you can make that, and you need to transition probably your messaging from, I don't know, hey, this is nice because your people will love it. Yeah, maybe you should keep that, but extend it to your people will love it, and it actually will help your company bottom line.
Yeah. No, I mean, like this, all of this pays into the. I really like that word, into the new normal that now is going to stay even after this crisis. So overall, in the sales world, being more helpful, being less pushy, really trying to understand where you can help your customers the most. I think this is definitely something that's about to stay. And yeah, I mean, other than that, like. We talked about that quite a bit, but do you think there are other things that are going to stay, like other things that are important for the new normal that we're going to see?
Yeah, for sure. I think we initially touched upon that. I think what's not going away is home office. So I don't think that, I think Facebook or somebody did it and they said like home office is now the default. I don't think that this is the solution. So I think that's maybe crazy to kind of like go from one extreme where we put everybody in the office and not allowed to leave between 9 and 6 p.m. in the office versus like everybody can just do whatever they want. And also it's not feasible for every company. There's good reasons why people should be in the office or why should not be in the office. So there's like all arguments on each side. But I think definitely the share of home office work will increase. So that means every company that wants to allow for this, let's say, fluidity within their organization, because it's not something that you can regulate. So you can do 40%, and once you hit 40%, you have to come to the office. So it's not how this world works. You have to have the right setup. And that goes back to the initial discussion that we had, like what are your tools? What is your infrastructure? So the infrastructure of a company, which was considered like, I don't know, 100 years ago, the machinery, the halls, the trucks, and so on, and the tools that you have is now completely different. It's not the halls, the trucks, and the machinery you have. It's like the Zooms, the Slacks, the demo desk, I don't know, all the types of things that allow for the type of work that you're in. And if you don't have that in place, you will not be able to cope with that new world. So I think that's the situation. But I also think that, for example, personal meetings, I would say I don't like Zoom meetings so much more as I liked them in the beginning, because I had so many of them. And at some point in time, you would like to see people face to face again. I think what will happen is face-to-face meetings will be important, but not in a way as we probably did them before. I think they will be more conscious. because like when half of the team is in the home office, you can't do a face-to-face meeting. But once you can, you will do that with much more intention and much more purpose. But you will do that less frequently. So, and I think that's a good development, because it goes away from, hey, let's have a meeting and I don't know whether we're productive or not, to more like, okay, let's have a meeting and this is the purpose, and let's all be ready so that we actually can harvest the input that we're delivering in there.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you so much for talking with me and sharing your insights. I did definitely learn a lot, and I bet also other salespeople watching this will learn a lot from this. And yeah, I hope that it continues to go as well for Personio as it did in the past. And I'm actually sure that it will. And I also can confirm that the culture is great. So I also know you guys for quite a while. And now, I mean, like it's really a great company. So I'm sure that you will overall benefit a lot from the current shift in the consideration. And yeah, thanks so much. And it was great having me on the call.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it, and all the best to you as well. I have also no doubts that you're well positioned for what's coming next.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali.